That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives.
It is. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for a very cool talk that we're going to have today. I want to say good morning. I want to say good evening. I want to say like for everybody watching us, because as you saw lately, we started doing the shows with more and more guests from different parts of the world. Today we have some really cool guests that I quickly want to introduce. The first is Renata Galle, and Renata is first one of my favorite persons to work with. She's a very cool person. She's the person that I go to get advice about all things digital, and we put together solutions almost every day. And basically is somebody that I'm very honored to work with. Renata is a vice president, Innovation and Digital Business, North America and APAC at Stefanini. Welcome, Renata.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and maybe good night for some of you. So nice to be here.
We also have a very special guest, Allister Richardson. Allister is Alliance Director North America at Digitate. And basically, Allister is a director for North America and focused on helping channel partners build their AI practices to support the growth that is happening in this space. Welcome, Allister, and thank you for joining our discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Renata. Appreciate it, and glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, guys, a lot of things are happening in the world right now, and basically, the digital and technology and all these things that were, how can I put this? We were trying to help our clients with and convince our clients to do are now mandatory for them. And one of the key elements that are happening in this space is the operational part. And now more than ever, the operational part, and here I mean end-to-end business operations. The operational part is now more than ever both responsible for the back end and how business operates and how efficient it is and how it manages to create good processes and support them with technology on one hand, but it's also more and more important from the consumer's perspective. The better your operation is organized, the better you are able to serve your consumers. And also, just to create a bit of context before we start the discussion, because of the COVID-19 situation and all the pandemic that the world has been through, all of the sudden we have a huge amount of people who just turned digital. They were people who didn't use digital a lot as consumers. They were people who didn't decide to buy online yet. They weren't yet onboarded. They didn't use credit cards to such an extent, especially in some parts of the world. And all of a sudden, these people came flocking next to the other consumers of brands and businesses, and they had to somehow face this surge in new customers. The pressure was put on the operational side, right? And at the same time, their operation needs to focus and deliver during these incredible times. So basically, this is the context that we are in, and we are going to talk about. And one of the first questions that I want to ask, and of course we're going to start with the lady, is Renata, what is the single biggest impact on business operations that this COVID pandemic had, from your perspective?
Well, I think we are living a revolution, right? I think we are in the middle of a revolution. And in my point of view, it's difficult to answer just one, Alex, because we have impact in so many things, right? From how the way that we sell, the way that we buy, the way that we interact with the co-workers. I mean, so many things, right? But I would say the biggest impact in my mind and the biggest challenge that together we needed to overcome is how the companies will now innovate, right? Understanding everything that is out there, right? How the companies are going now to innovate with a smaller revenue. Some of them really have been impacted revenue-wise, right? With the same budget or with a smaller budget, right? So how are they going to overcome that, right? So, so the biggest impact in my mind is to solve this equation on smaller revenue or same revenue or smaller revenue, is smaller budget, but really the need to innovate. Right. So how to solve this equation, right?
So basically, and this is a very cool answer, actually. What you're saying is the single most biggest impact was the model itself. The business model itself.
Yeah. So if we, for instance, if we reflect about what we've been going through, so the processes in place, the way that we operate, for sure, since the Industrial Revolution, a lot of things changed, right, and innovated, incremental innovation, maybe for some specific segments, more revolution with the technology companies. But still, the traditional processes and model, they were in place for hundreds years, right, for decades, right? And then everything now changed, right? So how to solve this equation with the same budget or a smaller budget?
So it's an evolutionary change, actually.
Yeah.
It's a forced evolutionary change. What do you think, Allister?
Yeah, I think if I look at from my perspective, what I saw, and we were all in this together. I mean, this is a global impact. The first thing that I saw was that organizations had to really very quickly ensure and maintain their operation. They had to look after their people. They had to change where their people worked, and they had to adopt to Renata's point, they had to adopt their well-established processes to accommodate this new normal. And so security, communications, people working on desktop. And if you're working in a audit capacity, you're working with client financial data. How do you ensure that the people using that data are secure, and they're accessing that data, that they're actually working? I mean, there's a plethora of challenges that were forced on people very, very quickly. I think that's the first thing. The second point to Renata's is you had an acute impact to revenue. Organizations had to make a drastic cost savings. They had to furlough people, drop in essential services. But actually, some of those services, being essential, they couldn't not happen. Somebody's got to do that, even if you're furloughed. So this all of this together had a major impact on operations. So we were asking operations to alter the way people worked and communicated, but we were also having to maintain the service with fewer people working in new ways that they weren't used to. So it was really a test for organizations in terms of resiliency, agility, and operational readiness.
This is a pretty interesting point. So basically, the pressure was double or triple because it had many layers of, pretty interesting. And since we are here, I want to ask you both guys, and of course first Renata, we are all in a state of change right now, and a lot of our partners, as you well know, are looking up to us and asking us for help and guidance, and a lot of the things we are learning together with them. We are co-creating the solutions as we go together with them, and this is one of the coolest things that we have in our DNA, in our group. But my question to you guys is, when do you think, in your opinion, again, that we will see a new normality in a semi-final way? Like, when do you think the number of changes that we constantly see will drop? Of course, there will constantly be changes, but when do you think we will be able to see a direction, to put it this way, in your opinion? Because it's one of the questions I receive and we receive a lot. When is this going to settle somehow?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, Alex, we are living I heard about the now normal, right? It's not the new normal, but it's the now normal because it's changing every day, right? So one of the things that I've been talking to my team and also listening from clients, and I think this is a good mindset, right? We should adopt like a sprint approach, right? So what are the actions that we can do to improve the results in the next quarter? Because if we are trying to tackle, or the companies that are trying to tackle everything, right, boil the ocean is very difficult, right? But coming up with an agile mentality, right, on, okay, so we needed to tackle the revenue, right? We needed to improve the revenue for the next quarter. So for the next semester, we needed to improve the profitability. We needed to keep the employees, right? So how do we do in a short-term results, and what would be the most important initiative? So in my mind, the now, I believe more in this now normal, right? And rolling out or starting initiatives that are really straight to the point, right? Next quarter, next semester, to improve the results and breathe again, right? So that's what I see, that we've been talking, and I talk to the client.
So basically, our message to all of our viewers who run complex operations is, there is not a specific time that you can look up to and say 6 months, 12 months, a year or two. But what you need to do, and thank you very much for pointing this out, Renata, is, guys, you need to prepare your organization for a constant changes status.
Totally.
So that is the actual answer to this question. The organizations don't have to adapt so much as they need to become adaptive. That is the key message. What is your take on this, Allister?
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot's been said around the new norm and the new normal. I think we're already there in many respects. One thing is for certain, we won't go back to the way things were, right? Organizations have kind of realized now that anything can be thrown at them, and this has been a great sort of test of their operational readiness, their agility, how they can handle stresses in the business. So I think that this is kind of the way that this will always be there from now on. So one of the interesting things is there'll be some introspective work done. People will look back at how did they handle this. There'll be lessons, and again, hopefully people learn the lessons that look, this problem was actually of the people type. Obviously revenue was suffering, the operations are suffering, but you couldn't just throw people at the problem. A lot of organizations say, we've got thousands of people, that we're going to fix this through just throwing people at whatever's going on. You couldn't do that with this particular problem. So there has to be a different way. And I think that this is where, a lot of introspection, a lot of lessons will be learned, that there has to be a different way of doing business moving forward.
Yeah, so basically, and this is a very good point for our viewers, basically we kind of need to change our corporate instincts in a manner. Like the instincts that all the big corporations had don't work anymore. So it's like a re-education process that we need to go through at the corporate level. So This is a very important point. I have another question for Renata. There is a paradox that we see right now, because a lot of our clients' discussions that we have revolve around, on one hand, they need to cut costs and they are under budget review due to COVID-19. At the same time, they need to invest and improve their digital footprint to stay competitive in the market. My question to you, Renata, is in this context, how can the smart operation help to solve and balance this paradox? How can these companies approach this paradox that they found themselves in?
Yeah, so for sure, there are some technologies in place, right? So if we are talking about changes, right? And if we are talking about not doing the same for less, but doing something new for less, right? In somehow. So how to achieve that. So for sure, from our perspective, it's not just about technology, right? But there are technology in place for that. In my experience, the mindset component is the most important one, right? To support and to come up with what would be the best approach and the best technologies to be adopted. But going to your question, if we talk about the smart operations, right? I've been in my past experience working 25 plus years in the technology environment. I've run some mission critical operations, right? So, and then the ability to identify specific activities, right? That they are repetitive. So if we think about processes such as order to cash in operations or procure to pay, some specific business processes that are crucial for the customer experience, right? To deliver the product on time, or to fulfill the store on time, or to deliver the service on time. So the ability to come up with the technology to automate as best as possible these processes to guarantee really you're competitive in the market, and also the satisfaction of the customer, of the consumer, right? Bringing more intelligence and automation on top of it, it's key, it's crucial, right? It's the way that we understand, one of the ways, right, that we understand will help the companies to save budget, to innovate more. So that's the way that we see.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, we've seen real world examples where by taking some of that manual effort and automating that using the late, smart operations technology type that we're talking about, then, organizations like one insurance company I know here in New Jersey have freed up 15,000 man hours of work through one initiative, which is the equivalent of 9 people that they can then move on to other areas of innovation. Those guys were probably doing very manual tasks that are best served by the machines handling. That's what machines are very good at. And then you can free up their time to do the innovation work, the stuff where the knowledge work that the business needs.
Yeah, these are very cool examples, and even on our side, we had several pretty impressive RPA projects that we did. And in one specific situation, okay, it saved the client around. It wasn't a very big investment from their side, but it saved 1.6 FTEs each month. But that wasn't the actual problem that we solved. Because of a specific type of configuration, some persons had to do some manual work in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you take in consideration the actual saving, it's one thing. But if you amplify the quality of life of those people who had to do some specific operations, then it amplifies much more. And usually the companies that do this type of investments, like our partners, are companies who really care about the employees' quality of life. And the quality of life is not just about what you do every day in a job. It's about your possibility to improve, to learn, and to create more and more. And if you save the time that you are forced to do repetitive tasks because we use technology here and there, then it gives the employees a world of opportunities of self-development. This is a very important aspect when we make decisions in terms of RPA projects.
So Alex, and going to your point, right, and being specific, right? So if we think about how much the company are investing right now to fix bugs on their SAP environment or their application environment, right? The bug fixes, solving incidents, right? That at the end of the day or in the bottom line, they are not, this type of activities, they are, how can I say, they are not adding value, right, to the company, but much more than that, to the employee itself, as you just said. The consultant or the employee that is doing these repetitive activities, right? If we think from a short term, okay, he has his job and he's doing his responsibilities, right? But in the mid-long term, what would be his professional growth, his path, right? Performing every day, all day long, or even during the night, repetitive tasks, right? What would be his career? What would be his professional growth? So it's not from a company perspective, for sure. Automating and it's good for the company, but for the employee itself, right? For the person itself it's important to think from a growth perspective, right?
Especially, a very good point, Renata, especially in the context that I'm going to be putting it out there. We are all fighting for good people. We are all fighting for good people in all parts of the world, in all regions of the world. And we are doing our best to bring the people in, to keep them, to give them as good conditions as we can. And I think using the right amount of technology to take these menial tasks off of their hands, is and should be part even of the HR strategy in specific companies.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We have proof and evidence that this can function in this manner as well.
Yeah, I've got a good example of an organization I was working with, and they were finding it very difficult to retain their level 1 help desk people because they were moving to different companies because there wasn't a progression. They couldn't backfill, so they couldn't allow their people to progress, and that was that was really bad for them because they were training these people up, they were learning their processes, and yet they were leaving when they got to a certain point because they couldn't backfill them with other people. It was a real problem for them.
Yeah, it's exactly what I want to underline as well, because it is very important for us to understand that the technology, and also for the people watching the discussion, technology is not here to replace, is here to empower. And this is a very important attitude that we as integrators and providers and companies that help the clients to have, but also for the client to understand and disseminate correctly within the company as well. Because it's not enough for us to know it and the management to know it, but it's important for all the people working in that organization, when they hear that projects like these are starting, to actually be happy about it and support them and adopt them. And since we talk about this, Allister, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is AI Ops specifically, and why are customers spending so much money to deploy AI Ops solutions, especially in the light of COVID? Please explain to us.
Yeah. So at a high level, AI Ops is AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, driven software for autonomous IT operations. Basically, what AI Ops does is it helps organizations leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning, with automation to address some of the challenges that we talked about, like resiliency, agility, reduction in costs. Some of the kind of the thought process behind this has been around for a while. We've been analyzing data, we've been using machine learning in places to get outliers, trends, etc. But if you want to get beyond this hindsight, looking in the rearview mirror with just analytics and kind of using historical data, you need to get to a predictive, and then ultimately what you want, if you can predict what's going to happen, you can actually prescribe how you fix that. And that's where the artificial intelligence comes in. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, look, this is where things have been, this is what's going to happen, this is how you fix that. Now, to get to that next level, you need obviously AI, you need machine learning capabilities, but you need contextual information around the organization. You need to understand what's going on, but you also need that domain expertise. Again, what you're trying to say is, look, let's have a machine that can emulate or replicate a level 3 person, an SAP support person, or a data center support person. How do you build that knowledge of all the years of experience? You need to build that into the platform so that it can sense what's going to happen and then prescribe a fix. That it doesn't stop there though, because a lot of AI Ops tools you hear about, they stop at that point. They say, the problem's kind of over here, you need to go do something about it. Well, I think that's kind of that's a big problem, because people then, some human somewhere has got to go do something about it. In the context of where we are, we're saying, here's the problem, here's what you do about it, and actually here's a self-healing closed loop approach to fixing that, so that everything is handled within the platform. You don't need to basically teach it what to do. It's already inbuilt with 30, 40 years of human expertise, so that the people on the ground can actually concentrate on the exceptions rather than the majority of the mundane, repetitive items that they're getting involved in. And that's how you get to this address the challenge of scale. How many times do your best people get involved in the most simple problems? They're kind of getting dragged all over. You want them to be focused on the real high value things. So again, you need that really when you're addressing the challenge of scale, but also when it's critical, because we're fixing things at machine speed. It's not taking hours to get through all these processes, all these problems. The machines are doing this, in parallel, taking things that would take 2 or 3 hours or 2 or 3 days in 2 or 3 minutes.
Nice.
And that's going to help with, things that are just in time, like the manufacturing supply chain, or, where the moment of truth where the customer is waiting. You can't have them wait for 30 minutes. You can't, 2 minutes on a website, they've gone. 2 minutes on a checkout line, they've put down their goods and they've walked out and gone next door. So again, we're in this mode where we've got to do things very, very quickly, and this is where technology has been used to do that.
And not only they would leave the bags and get out the door, they would put out a bad review, put 1 star everywhere, talk to them, and you know how this works. But if we are talking about, and this one is for Renata, if we talk about areas as e-commerce or supply chain, can you share some examples, Renata, on how AIOps positively impacted companies in these areas?
Sure. So going to Allister example, right? So let's say I'm a consumer, I'm buying something, I have a product in the shopping cart, and I'm facing a challenge to complete, right? So, or let's say that I finished the purchase, but there was a problem in the system integration, and the time to deliver, to ship the product will be impacted, right? So I think for sure, right, as a consumer perspective, no one, as Allister said, no one is willing to wait more than hours or days to receive the product, right? So let's say Amazon kind of changed the whole consumer expectation to another level, right? So if we analyze from a customer experience perspective, from a consumer experience perspective, having the ability to automate, for instance, troubleshooting, right? I had a problem to finish the purchase and integrate the supply chain in my e-commerce, right? So you have 2 scenarios. You might rely on the human intervention and the bug fix approach that sometimes, you know, will take hours or even days, and you will have a consumer unsatisfied in the other hand, right? Or, and you also have probably an employee that is not satisfied to keep doing bug fixes and not growing his career, right? Or you have a second scenario where you can come up with technology, right, that will automate the troubleshooting, will do the self-healing, will come up with the root cause analysis, will bring this intelligence and the speed that is necessary to solve the problem, right, and to allow you, your company, to deliver the product for the consumer, right, in a faster way, right? And more than that, we will allow your consultant, your employee, to spend his time really creating and developing something that is more valuable in the processes and in the application, rather than spending hours and hours and days with bug fixes, right? So I think this is key, right? This is so crucial. And if we think from a financial perspective, the company will be able to, if we think about what we talked at the beginning, right? Same budget or lower budget to innovate. How do you do that? How you overcome, right? So I think this is crucial for the company to overcome, right? This automation, this intelligence in the operation, to really invest human time in what is valuable and automate what doesn't bring value. We are talking about this for so many times, but this is the crucial scenario.
So basically, the whole idea is that we have to look at the tangible ROI and intangible ROI. The tangible meaning FTEs, hours, and so forth. And the intangible ROI is all the things you guys talked about, like the ability to add value, to improve itself as an organization by releasing all this time the people were putting into menial tasks.
Yeah.
Everybody should start doing.
The ability to create a business case for this is very compelling. I mean, you know, for most people, it's either efficiency, productivity, cost savings, optimization or automation. These are the kind of the things that are driving the organization, and it's very easy to build a compelling, tangible cost benefit that would cover the investment, but then you've got all this extra stuff on top that is kind of the intangible stuff that you talk about.
Okay, cool. So this is very important actually in how to create the business case in the corporation. There's a specific way of creating it in which you have to include all of these things, because we have to look at the present and also a lot at the future, and we need to look at it from the mathematical perspective, but also from the quality of the life of the employee's perspective. Yeah. Very important aspects for our viewers. Please.
In adding to this point, right, this approach, as Allister said, right, the business case, we are not talking about a journey that will drive results for the company after 2 years, right? If we go back to the major question, how can I improve my results for the next quarter, right? For the next semester. So this is something so tangible and so applicable, right, that can help the company to increase the results in a short, for sure, we can define short, mid-term, and long-term, but in a short term, it's really the key, right? So in applying all these technologies, what we see, companies building this business case and achieving that.
Yeah, and it's important when you do that you've got to work with an organization that can drop these in and get you moving quickly, right? There's been, we might come to this later, but there is, you want out of the box functionality. You want the domain expertise built in. You don't want to spend 2 or 3, years building the models. You want to take what's applicable to your domain and then replicate it, because people are already doing this. Lessons have been learned. Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. That's key.
Yeah, the category in-depth expertise, I think it's a key differentiator, because we can all go and buy hammer and nails from a DIY, right? But not all of us know what to do with it specifically, to give a simple example. So guys, before I ask one of my other questions, we received a question from one of the viewers that wrote to me here and said, how long would it take for an auto manufacturer, for example, to implement these AI ops solutions? I think the question refers to if we can give a timeline to implement a first step, and then what would be a timeline for the entire implementation.
Do you want me to take a stab at that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So audience.
Yeah. The actual deployment is SaaS based, so we stand these the instance up very, very quickly. The data that we get, the models, if we have historical data, then obviously we ingest the data that you've got. And again, we're very focused on looking at specific big wins. We'll always try and get you that, because the organization have seen too many in theory, people have seen failures in AI type implementations, and we're trying to get you the ammunition to go further. So we would say, look, give me the data. We can do the ROI very quickly. You can deploy the solution in in hours and days. Ingest the data. The hard part is really bringing in. I mean, we've got a lot of out of the box integrations with your tools that you're using right now. We'll take that data and then we'll start to model that. And you're going to start seeing, once we've built this contextual view, this blueprint of your environment, that's kind of the time, because once you know the blueprint, how everything's connected, then you can start seeing immediate value. So again, it's hard to say, on the scale of the environment, but generally what we're seeing is within a month you're seeing value, and that's including the implementation, and potentially you might see things that you hadn't seen before over the period. I mean, the example I gave you where the customer had seen 15,000 hours of productivity gains, that was over a 6-month period, which in the terms of an enterprise IT project is no time at all.
True.
Yeah.
I have another question here, still from the audience. I know the name of the company. Hello. I know the name of the company. I'm not going to give the name, but they are producing beverages, alcoholic beverages. And the question is, could we do a pilot for a specific factory? Like, does the geographic distribution matter to see something at work, or we need to start the umbrella operation on a bigger level?
Yeah, so again, that's a great question, and I would recommend that people bring it to a very quantifiable area. And the way that we operate, you can take a slice of the organization, maybe one unit, one factory, even one application you could look at. So again, it's modular. You can start somewhere, run a pilot, prove it out, and that's what I would recommend you do, because you want to see the value, you want to have the numbers, then you can take it to the business and say, here's what we did over here, we saw tangible benefits, here's what we could do elsewhere. So yes, that's absolutely the right way to do it, in my opinion.
Okay, good. So now coming back to my questions, but I always think that it's priority to take the questions from the audience always. I wanted to ask you which verticals are buying into AI ops and why? Which verticals? Because we had live automotive and beverages. I'm not going to say alcohol beverages, but alcohol beverages. So don't drink and drive. Very important. Although like automotive producers, and so obviously people watching us from these two areas are interested. What other areas would be interested in this?
Yeah, so for me, retail has been the top. Obviously, they've been quick to take on board this, and retail, manufacturing, the just-in-time process lends itself to needing things up, and the agility side, the availability, the resilience to the supply chain. Banking and finance has been key. Telecoms. It's really a very horizontal use case. The business case stacks up horizontally, but anywhere where there's a real customer sat, agility, resiliency, anywhere where if you're getting a call in the middle of the night to say something's not working properly, then you're going to need this type of approach. I think that's a good way of, if you're getting the call at 4 a.m. and it's important enough to warrant this.
Okay, cool stuff. Because I think it's there are a lot of people from different areas watching, and I think this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Renata, and we talked about. I just received another question from the audience. It says, how do AI ops solutions fare in terms of scalability and flexibility? Can a company change the scope of work midway the project? Should the situation ask for it?
Well,
well, from a company perspective, I mean, we've got so my organization have some of the largest Fortune 500 companies in the world, using like large aircraft manufacturers or aircraft, airlines, to major retailers, household names. One of the, a good example is PostNord over in the Nordics. That they're kind of like the postal service there. Their supply chain is basically, there's a good video on YouTube that basically articulates their use case, and that's kind of the scale. Really, we've been proven at the enterprise, at the high-end enterprise, multiple times. That's kind of where our sweet spot has been. So yeah, from a ability to scale, yes, it's there. As far as the process in the switching up during a project, I would hope that you've done the due diligence enough to pick out the use case, because that's the critical part. Making sure the use case is what you actually is going to make an impact to the business. If you spend the time there should be no reason to switch up. But again, if priorities change, then...
If I can jump in, because I know I realize why this question was asked, because I can see I can see the area of operation where it came from. I think it referred in this pandemic situation when you meet, you are implementing something. It looked very okay, and then boom, in the middle of the project, you have to change everything. And I think that's what originated this question. So am I right? I'm asking the viewer. Am I right? Okay? He says I'm right.
Right. Okay.
And going to what Allister was saying, right? I think the smart operations, if we think about the traditional way where IT were organized before, it was more oriented for like a horizontal one, right? Infrastructure, application, and digital. And I think the AI ops approach, it brings the vertical, right? So you can really have a deep understanding and a different approach, integrating infrastructure, application, the digital channel, really to guarantee that the customer, the process will be completed, right? So many times what we've seen in operations is the infrastructure is running well, the application is running well, but there is a process at the end in a digital channel that is not working and no one knows what's going on. So the ability to dive it vertically across the how can I say, across the structure, right? Infra, in digital, this is in troubleshooting that and automating that. I think this is the biggest benefit. And for sure, you can start with one process and scale up. For sure, it's possible.
Yeah, and there's one example comes to mind. You know, if you've gone on the journey through an innovation, if that was the productivity or efficiency, if that was kind of the goal to begin with, you wanted to free up resources for innovation, and then midway through, like what we've seen, people had to move immediately to cost savings. How can I now save money rather than, free up time is one thing, but I want to actually save cash. Well, within our product, you're able to, one of the additional use cases, I mean, it's there, it's ready for you to use, is cloud waste and sprawl. So again, you might be looking at reducing the automating a process, or looking at fixing a particular problem over here. Yet within the product, you're able to save cash through cloud sprawl and waste and identify that. So again, yes, within there's so many use cases. This is kind of the challenge. If you think about all the data you get in, there's going to be a plethora of things that you can fix. It's about identifying the right ones that's ready for right for your business. But if you change your priorities, then there's enough in there for you to say, well, now I need cost savings, I can go over here, or now it's efficiency, I can go over here, or it's productivity, I can go over there.
So to change the direction. And guys, I have another question. It looks like it's generated a lot of interest. I'm also looking one eye at the time, but I think we should at least take this question. And the question says, if we were to adopt and plan for such a change in our organization, how much resource would it be necessary from our perspective? So I think the question refers on, if I'm right, the question refers to what is, so you bring the team, you put it in place. What does the company need to bring? Am I right with this? Yeah. So basically the question is, what is the company's involvement into this? And I think it's a good question, actually. And thank you for this. I think it's a good question because it's not just, paying the integrator and saying, okay, do it for me. They have to put a lot of people in the process. And the question comes, I'm going to mention this, the question comes from retail, from retailer, like many stores.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a stab at this first, but because we've got a good example. Absolutely, you need the organization will make some shifts. We've got organizations that have and we've got referenceable customers that are out there that have created their own almost like automation hit squads. They've changed the model of their, of what they've been, their tactical engagements into specifically on automation or, leveraging the technology. So that's kind of where, they've invested, and that's where you've seen success. It's like any change project, really. I mean, this is a change of philosophy, and there needs to be an investment from the management layer, the technology teams, and the people in there, not just on the products, but also from a time, engagement model. The people really need to buy into this process. So yeah, it's like any big change process. Again, you can start very small in IT, or you can start very small in one area of the business, but to really go to where the potential is, it's a change project, and you would accommodate it that way.
Yeah, and Allister, adding to your point, right? I think every time when we talked about change, right, people sometimes they get scared, right? Some people, they love change. Some other people, they don't like it, right? I think what is different about AI Ops is, as we said in the beginning, the business case and the benefits, they are very clear, right? So there is a motivation, right? So from several different perspectives. So there is a financial benefit. There is a life benefit. So the person can sleep throughout the night, right? The person will not need to wake up in the middle of the night. So the employee will have, from HR perspective or people development, the employee will be able to invest his time to grow, right? Growing the company and growing the employee, right? To grow his knowledge. So I think to drive the change, having this, it's very clear and it's very tangible, the benefits to motivate the change. Right, I think that's what I'd like to emphasize, because technology is capable to do almost everything, right? So I think people sometimes they are scared to change, but as I'm saying, it's very tangible, the business case and the benefits itself.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So basically, I think the key message that we need to relate to our viewers is that there's modularity not only in the way we put together the solutions and we create a hybrid between employee and machine, but also in the way we start. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because you're the experts here, we can decide the size of the first step, we can decide the size of the first leg of the journey, and we can decide the entire journey custom per each reality in each company.
Correct. And I think it's dangerous to look at this and say, I'm just going to move to a completely automated AI-driven environment overnight. I mean, that's not practical. But what is practical is that you show tangible wins, you show the victories, and you build a momentum from there. And then what we've seen is you do that, and then the rest of the business wants to get involved, and they're screaming, can I do this? Can I do that? And that's where the momentum takes over then. That's kind of where we've seen, that's been the most, that's been the biggest wins where we've seen when that happens.
And on top of that, Alex, if we think about the agile organization, right? So in the now normal, coming up with a 2 years, 3 years plan, nowadays is kind of unrealistic, right? So I think the approach to start small, to sprint, to do your sprint, to tackle one specific area, one application, one process, and then, okay, I will learn from that, I will implement in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks. Then I will iterate again, I'll do to my next sprint. So that's what is more realistic, right? And because as the results are coming, you will drive your priorities, right?
So to give this a more dramatic aspect, you'd rather have one small victory at a time than one big long war at a time.
Correct.
Sure.
basically.
Yeah, because I mean, in the reality, as we said, right, everyone is looking for short term, right? So how to achieve the short term, but also thinking in the long term. So I think that's the best way.
Yeah.
Cool. So guys, before we thank you very much for staying over time. You see, now we received another question from the audience, but I think do we take it or not, because we are already a lot over time?
I'm good. Yeah, throw it in there.
Okay, so the question says like this: can AI ops be sold as a service? If no, why? And it also says context. There is a new emerging trend on the internet in regards of AI ops software. And it says there are companies offering AI ops as a service, especially in response to COVID-19. Are they believable? And this is the last question, guys. So write to me all the questions that you have and I will relay it to my colleagues. So this was the last question we take.
Let me just take a stab at that, because I'm kind of AI ops as a service. I mean, the technology is there as a service. I mean, but actually we're not talking about AI ops as a service. We're talking about operations as a service there, because AI ops is just a tool, a different way of approaching the same problem. If you're talking about organizations that are outsourcing services and they're backing that up with AI, then again, you have to look at their ability to provide the service at scale for that business. Again, we are in the business of building the product, building the platform, allowing you to, customize it, use it in your environment. If you're going to outsource your operations to a person that uses that tool, then I think the bigger question is, can they handle your operation at a bigger level, at a wider level, rather than just the technology. Renata?
Yeah, so for sure, as you said, right, the operation as a service. I strongly believe that it's always together with the client, right? It's a partnership, right? You will do the operation together. So who understands the best its pain points? So it's the client, it's the company, right? So as a partner, we are there to innovate with them, to add value, right? So this as a service mentality, for sure, it's technology-wise, it's totally possible. It's more the way that makes more sense for the company from a partnership perspective, from an engagement perspective.
Yeah, and the service piece is just a consumption model. It's just how do you pay for it? Again, that's
yeah.
Very good point, guys. So first, before I thank you guys, I want to thank all of our viewers, and I want to thank for the cool questions that we kept receiving. Obviously, it's an interesting subject, and I also want to ask you guys to repeat this discussion in I don't know 1-2 months to see how things are evolving, and to also inform our viewers about how things evolve in this market. And I want to thank you very much for participating, Renata and Allister. I think the subject is very interesting, and I think you shed a lot of light on many of the things people are wondering about initiating a long-term project like this, which is truly a transformational project, both from the cultural perspective, technology perspective, and also from the entire behavior of the organization itself, the organization that adopts it. And pretty interesting things. If you have other questions, guys, send them to me or write to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, even here in Crowdcast, and we'll be sure that we answer every question. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time and for answering all these questions, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Allister. Thank you, Alex.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day ahead.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.